I just was always a wild, loose kid in my neighborhood. I just always went for mine. I maintained myself. I knew how to hustle, and I definitely wasn't no punk.
These little running around like I wasn't brought up. I was brought up toting slammers. Like, so my belt had to be extra tight. You feel me? Like
the first game, my nigga Punch Jim was popping, homie. Cat boy, I still fuck with you already know. I shout out to Melly and everybody. I still fuck with my in Harlem. It's all good.
The line separating street respect and hip-hop fame has always been fine. R.A. Diggs ensured that Jim Jones experienced this lesson directly one night in New York. This was not a rumor or something from the internet. This was one of those moments that circulated through every block, every barbershop, and every corner where people discuss who's really who in the city. Jim Jones was on top of the world. Dipset was on fire. Fallon was ubiquitous. And he strolled as if he were royalty from Harlem. Yet the streets of Brooklyn didn't submit to anyone. And that's where R.A. Diggs entered the picture. A man whose name instilled fear even before he ever dropped a verse. At that time, Ra Diggs was more than a rapper. He was a recognized street general. His legend carried weight. Former inmate with respect in the projects, recognized for his boss-like moves long before the industry heard of him. People lowered their voices when Ra Diggs was mentioned. He possessed ties, soldiers, and a code that he truly adhered to. As Jim Jones began to stroll through Brooklyn, exuding charisma and that distinct Harlem vibe, folks started paying attention. Ra, in particular.
I'm from the era where we sold the drugs, we didn't use them per se. That was the quote-unquote.
I belong to the generation that sold the drugs. We didn't utilize them directly. That was Everything began at a club event in Brooklyn. Some kind of industry meets street night. Jim Jones arrived in style, showcasing his bling, uncorking bottles, and announcing to all that Dipset had made its entrance. He had the superstar aura, the shades, the swagger, and the whole Harlem vibe. But something about that night felt off. People said that Jim's crew clashed with some locals over seats or bottles, and those locals were connected to R.A. Diggs. In just a few minutes, the news reached R.A. Upon his arrival, the atmosphere in the room changed. According to witnesses, it was palpable. The volume of the music decreased. Individuals began to shift aside. Ra Diggs strolled in with a cool demeanor but a weighty presence, like someone who had nothing to prove. He glanced at Jim Jones and inquired directly, "You good, homie? Do you know where you are?" At that moment, the tone shifted. Jim attempted to keep his composure, but R.I. wasn't present for any Hollywood performance. He said to him, "There are no cameras out here. Respect is mutual." All the spectators understood that this was not a debate. This was a case of one man checking another. The crazy thing is, Jim didn't argue. He did not swing. He did not bark. He simply nodded and attempted to defuse the situation, while Ra Diggs turned and walked out as if nothing had occurred. However, the ensuing silence was deafening. It was said to feel like witnessing a superstar come to terms with the fact that he's still just a man in someone else's city.
You blood from this day on, when you see us throw it up, you be putting way more work in than half these bloods that be out here and things like that. So you the homie now. When you see us throw it up, that's just that.
To grasp why that moment was so impactful, it's essential to know who Ra Diggs truly was. His birth name was Ronald Heron, and he wasn't just a rapper trying to seem tough. Originating from the Gowanus houses in Brooklyn, he came from a place where you either earn money or get consumed. Ra was recognized in the streets long before his music career took off. When he began to rap, he had already established a name that inspired both fear and respect. When he talked, people paid attention, and it wasn't only due to the lyrics. He embodied the genuine old-school street structure that New York began to lose as fame took over. When R.A. Diggs and Jim Jones crossed paths, it was more than just a personal issue. It represented a clash of cultures. You possessed Harlem flash but Brooklyn discipline. Jim embodied Dipset vibrant, self-assured, boisterous. R.A. Diggs embodied Brooklyn raw militant, with no smiles. And on that night, all the swagger of Harlem meant nothing. The tale tells that Ra wasn't attempting to instigate conflict. Azogine grins. It was said that Jim's crew disrespected the locals, tossing around money and attitude as if they owned the place. R.A. Zog vorbei, Amin zu, Iranon, das hier, ist nicht den Strage, sondern mein.
They allege that Heron is guilty of racketeering charges for running a drug-dealing operation in the Gowanus housing development where he grew up. They also claim he was involved in 3 murders and 3 attempted murders.
The incident circulated quickly due to the fact that everyone present recounted it identically. R.A. remained calm, refraining from yelling or issuing threats, and simply checked him in front of the crowd. That calmness is what contributed to its legendary status. He didn't require noise to attract attention. It was said that Jim's tone changed after that. Stop with the bragging and the Harlem talk. He was aware of the time. The entire affair became part of street folklore, despite the fact that no punches were exchanged. That was the night when Brooklyn, if only for a moment, humbled Harlem. Subsequently, whispers began to spread. Ra Diggs put pressure on Jim. he retreated in Brooklyn. R.A. Diggs made him respect the earth beneath him. Exaggerated or not, the story lingered. Once a tale of that nature becomes associated with your name in New York, it becomes eternal. Even after R.A. Diggs got embroiled in a federal case and received a life sentence, people continued to reference that moment as evidence of his authenticity. While they might have called him wild, he took care of business, even when it came to celebrities. That meeting became a part of Raw's legend, the day he reminded the industry that some fame just doesn't cross certain boundaries.
Raw Diggs got 3 life sentences. You heard about this?
I actually seen it on, I think it was on your website yesterday, and I was like, and I feel.
That night served as a reality check for Jim Jones. Jim has always been a hustler and confident, but even he couldn't deny the impact that moment had on his street image. Harlem still rocked with him heavily, but outside his zone, whispers began to circulate. Whenever he'd adopt a tough persona in interviews or rap about being outside, fans would comment things like, "But what about R.A. Diggs?" It turned into the one tale that individuals clung to. What's astonishing is that Jim never tackled it head-on, not even once. He didn't affirm or reject it, and his silence was very telling. If it weren't true, you would expect someone like Jim to correct the record. Instead, he remained silent, perhaps coming to the understanding that certain stories are best untouched. However, behind the scenes, those who know Jim say that moment changed the way he moved. Following that night, he began to bring fewer people to events in Brooklyn. He directed more attention to business and less to the street show. R.S. check transformed into a wake-up call for him, almost reminding him that fame doesn't erase consequences. In the meantime, R.A. Diggs emerged as a representation of genuine New York energy. He embodied the streets that never sought fame. His name continued to be mentioned, even after he was convicted. He was mentioned in songs by rappers. Street dudes recounted tales of his respectfulness toward those who came correct, as well as the lethal consequences for those who didn't. It was that equilibrium of respect and fear that set him apart. As documentaries and interviews about old New York began to emerge, this tale resurfaced the night Raw Diggs put Jim Jones in his place. Not due to it being beef, but because it demonstrated something genuine. Ways to check ego when it departs its area. To fans, it was more profound than mere gossip. It served as a reminder that the streets are not something you rent. They are something you belong to. Even years later, that one story still resurfaces whenever Jim's name comes up in discussions about street credibility. Some claim it's overstated. Some people swear they witnessed it firsthand. However, the message is always the same. Regardless of how famous you become, there will always be someone more genuine, quieter, and prepared to challenge you if you lose sight of your position. Ultimately, that night entered into New York hip-hop lore. The night Diggs reminded everyone that fame doesn't change the streets. There was no question of violence. It was not a matter of ego. It was a matter of principle. R.A. Diggs didn't pressure Jim Jones to make him look bad. He did it to ensure the code remained active. Respect precedes reputation without exception, and that's something the younger generation had to witness. For Jim, it was not a complete loss. A lesson it was. Since that time, he has changed into a businessman, a family man, and even a motivator. Perhaps that moment helped him mature more quickly, as the old Jim who thrived on confrontation began to give way to the calculated, older, and wiser version we see now. However, the streets and the fans have long memories. Every city has a tale like this, but this one happened to involve 2 names so significant that they resonate across decades. Regarding R.A. Diggs, his legacy grew complicated. Certain individuals recall him for the music that never quite launched. Others recall him as the last of a vanishing kind, an individual who acted with loyalty, courage, and adherence to principles. Even while incarcerated, people still mention his name with respect. Whether you loved him or feared him, you knew he represented something genuine. The lesson of the story. While you can purchase diamonds, cars, fame, and followers, respect is not something that can be bought. It is gained in spaces without cameras, at the intersection of pride and power. And on that night in Brooklyn, R.A. Diggs demonstrated precisely what that signifies. Indeed, the day Raw Diggs put Jim Jones in his place was more than just a tale. It marked a watershed moment that revealed the distinction between fame and foundation. While Harlem had the lights, Brooklyn had the code. And when those two clashed, the streets were called who emerged with their respect still intact. In this game, no matter if you're a rapper, boxer, or boss, the rule is always the same. You can't fake real. That night, Raw Diggs didn't need to say much to demonstrate it. That night in Brooklyn became one of those stories that the streets never ceased to discuss. Since it involved more than just Jim Jones or R.A. Diggs, it dealt with the consequences of the collision of image and reality. As you can see, a man can lose sight of his position when he becomes famous. However, the streets will always remind you, R.A. Diggs didn't require a camera, a chain, or a viral incident. His mere presence was more impactful than any chart-topping record. He didn't need to threaten anyone, no need to create a spectacle. He simply locked eyes with a man and reminded him that respect isn't concerned with fame, That is something that the new generation doesn't understand. It's not about who makes the most noise online. It's about who can remain standing tall when the lights go out. That night served as a humbling experience for Jim Jones. You could achieve wealth, fame, and even legendary status in your own domain. However, upon entering another person's world, respect is the only currency that counts. It was a hard lesson for him to learn. Regardless of whether he ever addresses it, that moment is now part of his story. Occasionally, the only way to accept the truth without acknowledging it is to remain silent. Regarding R.A. Diggs, he may be incarcerated at the moment, but his legend endures. People still discuss his demeanor, how he never bowed to anyone, and how his name continues to resonate across borough lines. He embodied a rare old New York energy, where a word had weight and reputation stemmed from genuine deeds, not followers. You may not see eye to eye with all of his actions, but there's no doubt about one thing. He was serious about business. Dies Geschäft, glorifiziert, die Stragen nicht. It's about recalling the foundations of the game: loyalty, integrity, discipline, principles that distinguished the genuine from the fraudulent. While every rapper aspires for respect, akin to R.A. Diggs, only a handful are willing to pay the associated price. This is what renders the story timeless. It goes beyond a headline. It serves as a warning.